Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is going to be a good one. This is the 2024 Suzuki GSX-8R. Now we'll get to that in 1 second. And this is the KTM Duke 790. Both of them are 2024s. And in the comment section, you guys requested a comparison between the Duke 790 that I just recently reviewed on its own with the Suzuki GSX-8S. I don't have the S available to me right now, so rather than waiting for the S to come available, I have the R available, and a lot of it is pretty similar between this and the S. So what we're gonna do is compare these two models and help you have sort of a practical comparison of which one is better for you. So to do that, of course, I'm filming here at McLean Sports. They give me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup. So do me a favor, guys, if you made it like even just this far, give them a like, maybe leave a nice positive comment for them to just, thank them for letting me do this. But yeah, what we're gonna do is not go over the specs so much. You can do that on both Suzuki's and KTM's website. That's the easiest way to just go spec for spec. But I always say never buy a bike just for the specs. You wanna look at more than that. So what we're gonna do in this review is look at a practical comparison. So a lot of stuff that doesn't show up in the spec sheet, doesn't show up in necessarily a full riding review as they talk about some of the riding things. There's lots of riding reviews out there, you can see those. But what we're gonna do is try to show you some of the things that the other videos aren't showing you to help you get a better sense of which bike is better for you. Even if it's not the 8R, it could be 8S, a lot of this is gonna be the same. Things like the dash, some of the controls, we're gonna look at all that stuff. All that stuff is pretty much identical. So let's get going with this review. So I'm gonna have to word this very carefully because I don't want to offend anyone. I'm a big fan of smaller motorcycles and smaller, more entry-level motorcycles. A lot of people call them beginner bikes. I always argue that beginner bikes aren't really just for beginners anymore. They're really good for a lot of riders, but in that beginner bike class, there is some cost cutting that takes away from just some of the enjoyment of overall motorcycling that you can get. And there's very few exceptions where you can get high quality components in a lower displacement bike, but once you move into this class of bike, around that 650 to 800cc bike, 850cc bike, you end up with a price jump from the beginner class, and you end up with a component jump from the beginner class. And in these 2024 models, that really shows through even compared to a lot of their competitors. So to me, this is that real ideal spot in the motorcycle lineup where you're not going into full-on heavy-duty sport bikes. Like in Suzuki's website, they call this a street bike in their category instead of a sport bike. So you're not moving into crazy high-end sports stuff that most of the time you don't need on the road. You're not moving into crazy luxury features that most of the time you don't really need. They're always nice to have. And what you end up with is really great bikes for regular people, for every day. If you want to take it to the track, you can. If you want to take it great on the street, you can. Both of these are going to be a lot of fun, and they're going to be very, very sporty, but they go about it in a very different way. So for two bikes that are in a similar, probably insurance class, you really have a lot of differences here. So what we're going to do is start at the front wheels of these bikes and go through component by component. Through the side, we're going to look at the dash, we're going to compare some of those differences in there. And again, we're going to try to show you stuff other videos aren't showing you. Let's get going. So if you've seen my videos before, I definitely sound like a broken record. I always like to start with the front wheels of the motorcycles because you can really see the manufacturer's intent. And the other thing you're starting to see when you look at the front wheels of motorcycles is that this class has now stepped up in components. So where we used to get sort of traditional mounting brakes, we get radial mount, we'll talk about that in a second. Where we used to get sort of right side up forks, we get upside down forks, and both these bikes are the same in that regard. You also have the same size tires as you would have on a super sport bike, so that means you can put any kind of rubber here you want if you want a little extra grip. I'll be fully honest, some of the KTMs come with Michelin tires. Those are the Austrian-made bikes. I believe this is a China-made bike. They now use a Chinese factory to keep some costs down. To me, that doesn't concern me at all. My iPhone, my Apple Watch, all that stuff's made in China. Some of the most highest, quality control items in the world are still made in China, so it's not the China from the 80s and 90s that I grew up with. It's still strict component control, so that doesn't bother me, but it does keep the price down for us. And you do see some differences here, like for instance, not Michelin tires. These are, I believe, Maxxis tires. But what you have here is sporty tire size, lightweight wheels, dual disc brakes, radial mount caliper. So that's going to give you extra stiffness in the brake. That's what you get on high-end super sport bikes. The upside down forks, like I said, they give you more stiffness up top, a little less unsprung weight down low. So that's what you want in a full sport environment. You don't see an ABS ring here because it's on the other side on this bike. We'll show you that on the Suzuki as well. But non-adjustable suspension is really the only thing here that says, hey, you could have been higher spec. but the suspension tuning on both these bikes is very, very good. So really good quality stuff here. One thing I want to show you, I don't know if you can see it, let's just zoom back a little bit. Yeah, you can see it there. Radiator here is a curved radiator, so it still gives you all the surface area, but it does give you a little bit less width when you do that. And that's one thing you're going to find with the KTM. Width is something they really try to control the whole way through. Let's quickly check the Suzuki and we'll keep moving through. So over here on the Suzuki, again, same basic idea exactly. Same size tires on both these bikes. These are the Dunlop Road Sport 2, so decent competitive tires for what you get from the stock. Again, you can move stickier if you need to because this is a regular tire size for super sport bikes and beyond. So again, same tire size, same thing with the upside down forks, so same benefits there. Same thing with the radial mount calipers, same thing. Dual discs, you got the ABS ring on this side here. So we'll talk about some of those things as we move through some of the specs. Flat radiator here, you can't see it through the bodywork here, but again, if you're looking at the 8S or 8R, it's all the same type of stuff, but I don't think that makes any big difference. There is some more width to both these bikes. There's just some more weight to the Suzuki as well. When I say both these bikes, the 8S and the 8R, but there is some more weight to these as well. Now that can be a good thing for some or a fine thing for some. Less weight's always generally better unless you're taking away things that you really need, but we'll talk about that as we move through. So we're going to show you the lighting on both these bikes. For some people, this is a controversial thing on both these bikes. I actually like the look of both these bikes, but again, we'll just talk about it technically rather than, you know, styling wise. You can decide on style. So first of all, what you have here is LED lighting. I haven't started the bike just to, you know, keep it off for now. But you can see if I turn the high beam on, all of the light lights up. So I believe lower is low beam, upper is high beam. I could be reversed on that. And then you have this daytime running light, which helps you be seen. It's not super bright right now, partly because the bike's not running, and it also, yeah, it shows up okay in the camera there. But what this actually does is it's fairly bright in itself, and because because LED lights tend to be fairly focused, the light that spills up from them actually relies on your daytime running light to light overhead signs like on a highway. So that is sort of a necessity, as well as when these kinds of lights, as well as just sort of a styling thing. So still got the bug light headlights. One thing that I'm a little surprised about is you have incandescent signals here, which just kind of surprised me on the KTM here. It is what it is. So the controversy over here on the Suzuki is this. This is projector beam headlights. We'll talk about them in just one second. And there's no cover over them or anything like that. It just kind of looks like they're plopped in there. For some people, they don't like that. Again, I don't mind this. I like the sort of narrow stack here. There's also a little light up there. We're going to turn this one on. You can see the regular headlight does turn on, and this is your daytime running light. Now, projector beams, same idea. They are very focused with a very sharp cutoff, and this can provide some extra light there as well, giving you that. So there's the front end, and the difference with the Suzuki is you do have LED signal lights front and rear, where you have incandescent signal lights front and rear on the KTM. Both these also have LED brake lights, so modern stuff right there. So now let's look at the heart of this bike. So first of all, this is the Duke 790. Now that's a little misleading. This is not a 790cc, it's a 799cc. So technically this is the bigger engine than over on the Suzuki, which is a 778cc, even though it's the 8R or 8S. So slightly larger engine here. One thing KTM really talks about a lot in their marketing material is the fact that this is one of the most compact engines in its class. I think they call it the most compact engine in its class. And you can kind of see that from looking at it. It probably won't show on video, but everything on this Duke is very compact. Like I said, a lot of narrowness to this bike, a lot of lightness. Now, one thing that's interesting here is this is a sort of a Duke trademark. You run your exhaust out here, or the headers out there to the exhaust up there. That's a Duke trademark. Now, it is high, which is not where you want weight, and it is sort of, you know, there. It does sound pretty cool, I'll give it that. You can definitely hear a cool sounding exhaust there. But you'll see that Suzuki does things differently. This is the lighter bike. You could have some weight savings by doing what Suzuki did, but they chose not to do that. So we'll show you what Suzuki does here that's a little bit different. So starting with the engine here on the Suzuki, again, this is a smaller displacement motorcycle, but you can see a little bit more stuff going on. It is definitely, to me, to the visual eye, looking just a slight bit bigger. And again, this bike is a little heavier, even though it makes a little bit less displacement. So 778cc, this engine has been generally very praised, definitely a torquey engine. A lot of people like it, but technically it does, well, in fact, it makes less horsepower than the Duke 790. So again, 778cc, parallel twins on both of these. And then you have the exhaust down here. Now the catalytic converter is right here, and you have the same thing on the Duke, so it is a smaller catalytic converter, but this is catalytic converter and exhaust, and it's all down low. So technically, this is a better placement for it. It keeps the heavy things down low. All of that is centralized and low rather than high, and you know, in theory, that's gonna help with handling and that kind of thing, but this is the heavier bike. So some of that weight is down low, which is where you want it, and that does lead to a very nice handling motorcycle. But it's interesting because if the Duke did the same thing, which they wouldn't do because it's sort of their trademark to have the exhaust up there, you could lower the weight and centralize the weight on the Duke as well. So a couple key differences there. Will they make a difference to you when you're riding? Probably not, but it is an engineering difference. So I'm gonna sit across both these bikes. Now again, I know that some of you may want to see the 8S instead of the 8R, but again, from the rear end, I should look at this one here, from the rear end here, basically from this point, there's a seam here, basically from there back, it's really the same thing, and the frame is basically the same from my understanding. It's just the handlebars and the bodywork that's different. So you're gonna have a similar seating position, although the handlebars definitely different on this. So let's start over here with the Duke 790. Now again, not being a sport bike, you kind of expect maybe not super aggressive position, but if you look at my legs here, they actually are fairly aggressive. You really do keep your legs high off the ground so you can really get good cornering clearance. And that's one of the things that the Duke brags about in some of their marketing materials, that although this is a naked bike, they really put your legs in a position more sport bike-like, so you've got good ground clearance. So even though it's a low seat height, I can easily touch my feet to the ground. It does keep your legs high off the ground for cornering clearance. So that's a good thing. Now, just as a practical thing, I always tell people never look at the spec sheet. Well, I mean, not never, but don't solely go by the spec sheet for seat height, because the Duke's a great example here. It's an extremely narrow bike here, and the narrowness of the seat allows you to easily flat-foot it. Again, I'm about 6 feet tall, proportional 6-footer. But it is very narrow here, and that makes it easier to flat foot this bike than it would be on other bikes that are maybe similar seat height. So legs up like that, you've got a very comfortable seating position. You know, I could ride like this pretty much all day. No wind protection here, but of course that's sort of the naked bike type thing. But yeah, very comfortable, and there's definitely a narrowness and pretty good lightness to this bike as well. One thing I didn't mention, there's a steering damper on that bike as well. So again, helps with some of that handling type stuff. Now you come over to here. This is a slightly heavier feeling bike. I'm gonna get the kickstand out of my way. Again, very low seat height. This seat height feels lower than that. I should mention, with all of the narrowness of the Duke, it does widen out in the rear. We'll show you the seat from the top in a second, and it does make it quite comfortable. This Suzuki is also fairly narrow for what it is. So again, not a real issue there. And again, same tank, should be the same thing on the GSX-S as GSX-R. A little more relaxed in the seating position here. You definitely feel like that is a more sporty seating position from the legs perspective. Now again, the 8S, I think you do sit up a tiny bit with the different handlebars. Even leaned over here though, this is not an uncomfortable position. And in fact, because you have that slight lean here, again, the wind's gonna hold you up anyways, it almost kind of opens up your whole body, because the Duke feels a little bit tighter in the leg, and you know, although you're up like this, but there's definitely more of a reach to the handlebars, and I think the reach would be similar, you know, the length between here and the 8S, the length between your seat and your hands, even on the 8S, would be longer than the Duke. The Duke feels more compact. That's part of where that lightness comes from, is that more compact feel. So to me, I'm gonna use the wrong word here. This one feels more serious, more mature. That one feels more playful, more toy-like, and I think there's something to that, but that's probably the wrong word to use, so don't destroy me in the comments for that yet. I'm gonna clarify that as we move on. So quickly taking a look at the seat that I was just on here, KTM talks about they've sort of tailored these seats for different textiles and leathers to be grippy. There is definitely a grippiness here and a little bit more smoothness here, so maybe some differences there. Again, quite wide at the rear, nice and cushy here. It may not look that cushy from the side, but when you squish it down, it's pretty cushy. Rear seat is middle of the class. It's nothing that's gonna be super comfortable, but certainly not uncomfortable for passengers on the Duke. So let's just sort of try to get the same basic view of the Suzuki now. So I'm not sure what it looks like on video back to back. You've seen the transition between the two. This one feels a little bit firmer, but I would say it's equally as comfortable. Sometimes a firm seat can still be comfortable. It's definitely not a hard seat, so I wouldn't say that. And again, maybe a little bit more width here, but definitely not a lot of width here. Both bikes to me are quite comfortable as far as the seat goes. Rear seat passengers, again, similar. This one might be a hair smaller at the back, but again, it's going to be more middle of the class. You know, there are probably a little bigger seats on other rear seats on other bikes, but again, similar there. While we've got the rear tire in view, I should say the rear tire is the same size on both bikes. It's a 180 series, which is bigger than some. Some still will stay with the 160 of this class, but 180 is sort of what you expect on this and anything above it. So now we're going to move on to the dash and the controls of both these bikes. I really like KTM's more modern dashes. I really like Suzuki's more modern dashes. They're probably two of the best. The one thing I will complain about with the Duke is this is not the fully most up-to-date KTM dash, simply because it is a little smaller. Now, I don't think you can sort of see that on video. We're gonna zoom in, so it's just gonna look big anyways. Again, filming outside, anytime you film a screen, I always have to clarify this, it's never going to look as good in person, or oh, sorry, it's never gonna look as good on camera as it does in person. Both these screens are very clear, this one and the Suzuki. Both are easy to read, both give you good information. So one of the things I like is, and it's just a personal taste, I do like the round tack that you get on the Suzuki and on traditional motorcycles, because as it moves, it's kind of equal, right? So you can kind of sort of see where you are. I don't know, there's something about my brain that just is more familiar at glancing at a round tack and knowing exactly where you are, or what, are you in the power band, that kind of thing. Now, part of that is because I'm spoiled. I see a lot of dashes on bikes. I think if you ride this every day, you're gonna know exactly where it is, so I don't think that matters. So anybody who complains about it not being a round tack, again, if it's your bike, you're gonna know exactly what's going on. So you got temperature gauge, you got fuel gauge right there, speedometer down here, you got a lot of controls, or these are sort of customizable things, fuel range, that kind of thing, trip odometer, you got temperature, your ABS is set to road mode, so we can talk about some of those settings and that kind of thing. Then you have the tachometer there, gear indicator up there. Very good, very well done. Like I said, a little small, but the other thing worth noting is, although this is smaller, it is considerably closer to the rider than it is on the Suzuki, which has a bigger dash. So again, you could do a bigger dash here. It would look very cool and very big, but it is gonna be different. So we're gonna show you the controls in a second here. We're just gonna step out of here. We're gonna go to the menu for a second. There's all kinds of things you can do in here. Let's just go down to the motorcycle section for a second. We're gonna go in there. Motorcycle traction control, the ABS mode. Let's just select that one for a second. So Supermoto or road. So Supermoto, of course, allows you to drag that rear wheel. On a street bike, KTM calls it Supermoto. On an adventure bike, they call it rally mode, but basically turns off the rear ABS. You can have some fun. So again, the fact that you can turn that off, although it's basically the same electronics as the adventure bikes, which on a gravel road you would want a different ABS mode. They sort of advertise it as sort of a sport and have fun kind of thing. Shift light in here, you can set that up for all kinds of things. So again, this bike is still in its travel mode, or its this bike is still in its transport mode, so it hasn't been set up completely. KTM does unlock certain things with technology, so we can talk about that in a whole different video if you want. Ride modes here, let's just jump into that. So you got sport, street, and rain here. You know, you can put it in whatever you want. Rain, of course, dies things down, but you do have some ride modes here. So again, that's gonna be similar to the Suzuki. The reason I have to dig into the menus to show you this stuff is because Suzuki is going to show you that up front. Let's take a look at that dash right now, and then we'll come back to the controls on both of these. So over here on the Suzuki, again, we're kind of zoomed out for a second here. We're going to turn that dash on here. It does not say ready to race. It just has the Suzuki logo. So again, a little more seriousness. Again, the service mode here is, well, it's just going to tell you need service when you need service. Now again, this dash looks busier, but it's actually, to me, very clear. I like their use of colors here. Again, KTM and Suzuki both have excellent dashes, so you know it's really just hard to tell. I will say on the Suzuki here, there is still the plastic covering on top. That's what the yellow tab is, so it's going to give even more glare again, but I think it works well enough on camera. Again, much better in person. So again, round tack, just my preference, may not be yours. That's totally cool. Temperature down here. Now, it's interesting. This says 28. The other one said 21. It is not 28 degrees Celsius. So that, oh, that's sorry. That's your engine temperature. There we go. So that's me misreading things again. Clock up top. Traction control. Lots of settings there. Suzuki's drive modes. Suzuki drive modes. I don't remember what SDMS stands for, but essentially the drive modes. A, B, C. So same idea. C is more the calm. A is more the aggressive. B is what you're going to probably ride in most time, or maybe A, depending on what you want. Quick shifter here. I believe the KTM has the quick shifter through that unlock software. So quick shifter up, down here. Gear indicator, fuel gauge. Like I said, no temperature gauge, but you have a temperature number down there. And like I said, everything that you need is there. So you know the quick shifter's on. You know the drive mode you're in, you know the traction control you're in, and it's very easy to switch stuff while you're riding here. So we're going to show you the controls. We'll start with the Suzuki, and then we'll go back to the KTM. So hopefully this makes sense if we stay with the same bike here. All right, so looking at those left side controls here, now you've got sort of your controllers in here, which means that you can't have a headlight switch there, which a lot of bikes have. So you press forward to turn on your high beams. Yeah, you put it back there, we're in the standard position, and then you can flash to pass. The KTM actually has the exact same system, different style switch. We'll show you that a little bit in their bike. So same thing there. And then this is where your controls are. Now, both bikes are good. I think because of the dash layout, this may be a little easier because it's only an up, down, and a mode. And again, we'll show you the other settings. Both are very easy to use. Again, this is where like reviewers get spoiled because they're like, oh, this one's easy to use. But the reality is, if you know your bike, it's going to be easy to use for you, either one. Both of these systems are good as far as ease of use, but only up, down, and mode here. I think there's a strength to that, and it's just like I said, the way they lay things out. Signal lights, horn. On the far side, there is a start switch. Let's just quickly show you that. And there is a hazard light, so we'll just zoom right into that. Start switch and hazard light. A couple kind of unique features here on the Suzuki. Just a simple tap of the start button, it will turn itself over and run. I'm not sure if the KTM has that. You don't have to hold that button down, I guess is what I'm saying at. And then the other thing is, if you don't rev a Suzuki, a modern Suzuki, enough when you're just starting out in first gear, it actually kind of gives you revs electronically all by itself. So it has a kind of a nice feature in there with the clutch lever. Like I said, if you haven't given it enough revs, it'll give it enough revs to help you, sort of an anti-stall feature. So very easy to drive bike here, which is good. Now the Duke is not hard to drive, but does not have that specific technology. It has got other technologies. Let's take a look at the controls on the Duke. All right, so again, I've praised KTM in the past for their simplicity. Let's see if I can show you, if we turn the bike on here. Hopefully you can see here, I believe these switches are lighted. They are on most KTMs. Oh, I don't know, it's hard to see in the daylight here. I don't think we can see, maybe they're not lit on this bike. A lot of KTMs have lit switches. Maybe these ones aren't. You have to let me know in the comments below if you own this bike. All right, headlight switch, same idea exactly. A little different feeling to them both, but they're both quality feeling. These are your controls here. So you have a back switch instead of just up, down, and set, which is basically, they had up, down, and mode on the Suzuki. So again, same basic system. But again, a few more things are buried in the menus of KTM. Now, one benefit KTM does do is you can custom set this switch or that switch or both to a setting. So if you just want to have a quick setting without going through the menus, you can tap that and it'll be whatever setting you want it to be. So it does allow you to not go through those menus. The other thing is, on a lot of bikes, you have to stop to use the screen controls. KTM in general, you can use most of its settings while you're riding. So be careful while you're doing that, but they do allow you to do that, which can be nice there. So again, easy to use on both these. Signals, horn down there, start switch on the other side, and no hazard lights on the Duke here. One thing it does have though that I like is brake and clutch levers are both adjustable for reach. Now what that does is it allows you to, not just if you have large hands or small hands, put it where you want, but it allows the grab point of the clutch and the grab point of the brake to be exactly where you want it. The Suzuki does not have adjustable brake lever or clutch lever. So if you made it this far, you made it to the good part, because showing the specs and that kind of thing, reviewing the specs online, of course, and showing the practical differences between these bikes doesn't really tell the full story. These bikes, after all, are generally in the same class, but they are very, very different characters. So we've talked about it a few times with the KTM. It is lighter weight. It's got those adjustable clutch and brake levers. It's got the steering damper here. It is narrower. It, to me, feels shorter. I haven't checked the spec at all, but it does feel shorter than this bike. So this bike, to me, when you're riding it, and just engine character, is a little bit more hooligan style. Now, what I mean by that is you can easily pop a wheelie on this. You can pop a wheelie on that, but it's just gonna be a little easier on here. The flickability of this bike feels a little different. It just feels like that little bit lighter weight helps you get side to side a little bit quicker. It is more frenetic. It is more instant in many of its sort of riding things. Now again, some of this is minor, but if you're the kind of person that's zipping through traffic, that's quickly switching lanes and doing that kind of thing, do that carefully because that could be very dangerous as well. But this may suit your personality a little bit more. Now, of course, having those drive modes, you can dial it down for rain, you can drive it as a regular bike, you know, just like casually through town, that kind of thing. All the drive modes are nice to have with that, but that's the general personality feeling that I get with this bike. With this one here, when I say it's a little more serious, I don't think you buy this or the 8S to do the wheelies, to do the really darting through traffic kind of thing. To me, this really shines potentially on a racetrack, but especially on those country roads, you know, higher speed, large banking turns. To me, this one just feels that maturity a little bit more, right? That less frenetic style, the more dialed in, precise style. You know, you're less darting around and more precision hitting those lines. The weight of this bike will play a role into it being a little bit less darty, but it also feels very stable. So you're gonna have that stability kind of built into this. I really like the quick shifters. I like that they've upgraded to upside down forks, radial mount brakes, all these kind of things. If you ever want to update this, you've got the hardware in place to really make this feel good. I just realized as I glanced at this, I did lie. Clutch lever is adjustable on the this bike, brake lever is not. So there we go, we covered that. But the character of this bike, to me, is a little different, and it really does make it an entirely different style. So whether you're looking at the 8R or the 8S, I think what you're getting here is something that is a little bit more adrenaline rush, where something here that is a little bit more long-term joy filled on a ride, right? I think for this bike, you're always looking for that next bit of excitement, whereas this one, you puts a smile on your face the entire way through. Now, I'm gonna get killed by KTM fans for saying, no, this bike puts a smile on your face for that kind of riding as well, and it does. It absolutely does. But I do think if you're looking between these two bikes, if you know that you're a little bit more frenetic, you're looking for a little bit more of that wild potential, you know, that untamed kind of horse kind of feel, this one might be a little bit more your style, where if you're looking for something a little bit more dialed in, a little bit more precision instrument for that kind of, you know, I don't want to overplay it, but I think if you can kind of tell through my words which one may appeal to you more, that's my sense. Now, which one would I buy? I love the idea of a bike like this, but I've driven sort of this kind of bike in the past, so as I'm getting older, I would probably lean towards this one. I like this one for me personally, so if you've seen a bias throughout at all, I like the way this has a little bit more torquey engine. That's gonna make, well, I don't know if it's more torquey, but it feels more torquey down low, which is going to give you that smooth on-the-road power, whereas this one, you rev it out and it just gets wild and fun. Again, more top-end horsepower. You're gonna feel that difference there as well. So again, even though this one has more horsepower, I should point out, this one's gonna feel as powerful down low and in the street kind of rev range. On a track, certainly when you're only in those high-end revs and you're staying in high-end revs, this one being lighter and having that higher horsepower is probably gonna be a little quicker as well. So, pure handling or balanced everything package, that's probably, you know, pure handling, better peak power, balanced handling package, that's probably my difference between the two of these. Whether you like the dash, whether you like styling, whether you like everything else, that's up to you. So hopefully this was a review you guys are looking for. If you have questions, again, McLean's gives me complete access to the entire vehicle lineup. Let me know in the comments below. If you made it this far, hit that subscribe button. Got lots more of these to come. And yeah, like I said, leave a nice positive comment for McLean's. If you don't know what to say, just leave them a nice comment to thank. And maybe hit that like button. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.